All right, hello and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about the matrix and how we get out of the matrix and what the matrix is and all of these things. So before I start, I just want to acknowledge the construction happening in the apartment, and so I'm very sorry if that's distracting for you. Like if you can pick up on, if you can hear it. It's just the realities of apartment building life. We can't always be in control. So that's that. All right, so let's talk about the matrix. Let's talk about why I never specifically say, okay, this is what the matrix is. This is the matrix, the thing that is causing us all of our delusion and all of our pain and all of our problems, and this is how we get out of it. So everyone needs to go and take all their money out of the bank and invest in a off-grid property and go off the grid and get off the internet and grow all your own food, and this is how we're going to save humanity. And the reason that I don't say things like that, okay, and even I know that there are a lot of people out there who believe theories about the elites and where they came from and why they operate the way that they operate and how they operate and the systems that we're under and all of that too. And I'm just going to state at the very beginning of this video that I am not here to try to change your mind. If you believe in something about how the world functions and that's what you believe, and you believe that there are people who are specifically doing specific things and that there's a specific narrative to how the society is running and all of that stuff, if you believe in that, totally your thing. Like I say, I'm not here to convince anyone of like, this is what's really going on and this is what's really happening, and you're a sheeple and you're asleep if you don't see it. Because I don't personally believe that the matrix or the society that we live in that's harmful and that it really does have problems is as black and white as a lot of people believe it to be. Okay, so my definition of living in the matrix, so when we talk about living in the matrix, living in a delusion, not seeing reality for how reality is, being controlled in ways that we don't know that we're being controlled, being used in ways that we don't realize we're being used. My definition of the matrix, living in the matrix, living in a reality that isn't reality, is simply that. It's anything that takes us out of being able to see reality for how reality actually is, which when we see reality for how it actually is, and again, I'm not even saying that we have the capacity to fully see reality for how reality actually is all the time in its completeness, because I do believe that reality is incredibly complex and our human minds have limits and our human perceptions have limits. So what we are talking about when we're talking about living in the matrix or being caught in the matrix or not seeing reality for how it really is, I believe that what we're really saying is that we're living in a way where we're suffering and we don't know how to remedy our own suffering, right? Where we're in pain, we're struggling, we're not being able to find the ways of life that bring us joy or peace or the capacity to have a good life, and we don't know why, and what we're doing to try to make things better for ourselves isn't working. Okay, that's my definition of the matrix. When we are living in the matrix, when we're living in a false reality, we either are completely don't understand why we're in the suffering we're in, and we don't know how to fix it, and we don't know what to do about it. We have absolutely no tools. Or we are aware of the suffering that we're in, we see it, and the solutions that we're trying to enact, the things that we're trying to do to make it better, the things we're trying to do to fix it aren't working. Okay, like they just don't work. We try the same things over and over and over again. We are not able to identify any cause, and like I say, we continue to try to change and make things better in ways that just don't work. Okay, that's living in the matrix. So when we have pain, we don't know how to fix. When we have struggle and when we have suffering we don't know how to fix, and we have no idea where it's coming from. And especially, so we'll get into this, yeah. This is living in the matrix. And the second thing about living in the matrix, I think, is when we're causing ourselves harm and we're causing harm to others and we don't realize it. We don't see that the way that we're living is a problem, and that there is power that we can take that will make things better. Or again, we've been conditioned to believe that things are our fault when they aren't. Okay, this is living in the matrix. So the biggest thing that I think that we need to understand about life as a human and life in the societies that we live in is that there isn't a simple narrative for how everything came to be, nor is there a simple solution to all of our problems. And I feel like in spirituality and self-help and personal growth, there's such an emphasis on this idea that it's all so simple, right? That it's just the elites, and if we just got rid of the evil elites, we would have peace in society. That it's just the medical system, and if we just got rid of the evil medical system, we would have peace in society. It's just the government, it's just the this, it's just the that. Or in like spirituality and self-help and personal growth, it's just, you just need to realize your true self. You just need to realize reality. Like, you need to go on your spirit medicine quest, you need to get enlightened, and once you realize what the truth is, right, with the capital T, you'll never struggle again. And it's, the thing about it is, for most of us, in the spirituality and the self-help and spiritual growth world especially, and I'm speaking from my experience here too, there's always this, it's just this thing you wake up to, and when you see it, you get it, and when you get it, you know what to do, and if you don't get it, you're just blind, and you just don't get it, and you're just a sheeple. But no one can ever actually speak directly to what they're even talking about. Right? I'm like, okay, well, if you understand how reality works, you understand what reality is, you see what the lie is, and you know what the truth is, tell me, like, what do you mean? And they're like, no, it's something you have to discover for yourself. It's understanding your own personal truth, and then you will, like, right, when you realize yourself, or you realize that yourself doesn't exist, and you fully connect with God or consciousness or non-duality, then you will understand reality, and then you will be free, and all of these things. And it's all very vague, and it's all very esoteric, and it's all very like, yeah, okay, so I have this inner transformation, and then everything is great, everything is how it should be, everything is perfect. And again, I really want to say that it makes sense that we would talk about things like this, that we would say freedom from our suffering, because that's what we really mean by waking up from the matrix. When we say, I'm going to wake up from the matrix, you need to wake up from the matrix, I'm going to figure it out, what we really mean is, I'm going to figure out why I'm suffering, and I'm going to break myself out of it, right? And there's a really deep reason why we would believe, especially in spirituality, self-help, and personal growth, that the answer is all within ourselves. You've probably heard a million spiritual teachers say that. You probably even heard me say that, and I'm sorry. That all the answers are within you, that you can just discover it within yourself, and once you discover it within yourself, your whole world will be all this much better. And again, it makes sense that we would want to believe that. It makes sense that we would want that to be what is true and what reality is. That to break out of suffering is just some internal shift that happens, some internal mindset shift, some internal realization. Because that's a thing we feel like we have control over, right? It makes, of course, we want to believe it's all within us, that it's all right here, that it's all us. Because to believe that is to have hope that we don't need something else. We're not going to miss it. It's not up to anyone else. We don't have to rely on anyone else. We don't have to rely on anything else. Everything that is hurting us can be solved with the thing we have control over, which is ourselves, right? And so again, I just really want to say it makes perfect sense that we want to believe that we can have some internal shift, we can have some realization, we can know something, we can wake up, and then that sets us free. Okay? Religion tells us the same thing. You get saved, you believe the right thing, you live by the commandments, and then you are set free. Personal growth and spirituality, personal growth especially, take out the spirituality, it's still everything in your life is your choice. It's coming from you. There's no history, there's no programming. Don't focus on your past. Don't blame society. Don't blame anyone else. Take your power back, because it's all you, which is just another way of saying everything is within your control. Everything that's happening to you is because of you, and therefore you have complete control over it, and you can fix it all. Yeah? We want to simplify it down to there's this one cause of our suffering. We are in control of it. And if we can just figure that out, we will be free. Because of course, wouldn't that make everything in life so simple? Wouldn't that make everything so easy? Wouldn't that make us feel like we have agency in places where we don't feel like we have agency? This is why when so many of us get into personal growth and spirituality, it feels so true and liberating and like the best thing ever, because we're coming from feeling like we have no power and we have no control and like all this stuff is happening and we have no idea why or how. And then we come into these messages that say, it's all you. It's all from within you. It's all because of you. It's all around you. It's all you. The universe is just reflecting you back to you. The universe, or, your life is purely just based on your choices, and you can consciously just choose different things, and then you will have a different life. Right? We want to believe that. And then again, even the people who are labeled conspiracy theorists, who believe that there's a ruling elite who are doing these things and we have to wake up to their plan and then all of this stuff, if you listen to them all the way through, which I have many times, their solution is always just, when you realize it, then you live from your heart space, and now you're free from it. And it's always just like, but what does that mean? Right? Like, it still comes down to like, now you know, and therefore you're empowered, and you're free. You're not a sheeple anymore. And then it's very, like, there's still no just like, okay, so what do I do, right? If there's this ruling elite and they're horrible and whatever, what does living from my heart space even mean? What does that mean? Be kind to people? Like, how does that destabilize the system? How does that change the system? Their solution, like their theory for it is always very fantastical and like a storybook. And then the solution is just tell people about it online, like know about it, and then you're smarter than everyone else, and haha, I know and you don't. But like, I don't really see people like taking like empowered action to actually do anything about it other than like going around and telling people how blind and stupid they are. And so I have just said, okay, I agree and I believe and I know and I have experienced that the way our society is set up is not great. Okay? So for everyone out there who believes that there's like an evil ruling elite or an evil system or any of these things, I'm not here to say again, you're totally wrong, everything's great, trust the government. Because that is clearly not reality. Like, that is clearly not reality. Yeah? We don't want to blindly trust or follow any institutions at this point. We have enough experience with religious institutions, medical institutions, informational institutions, governmental institutions, to be able to see that there is corruption everywhere. There is greed, and there is personal interest at heart, and there is crime and all sorts of really horrible things happening everywhere in society. That is obvious. And it is also obvious that, again, the way society is set up, as much as we want to tell ourselves that all of our choices are our own, that everybody has the same equal opportunity for success and the same equal opportunity for expansion and safety and finding a good life, and the people who don't have one are just making bad choices. They're just the riffraff of society we shouldn't think about or care about. The people, this belief that personal responsibility is the ultimate truth and the ultimate savior is a part of the matrix, is a part of what is separating us from being able to see reality for how it really is, and therefore giving us the empowerment to move towards something that's better. We need to start to understand that, again, trying to simplify reality down to this is what it is, and therefore this one thing is the solution, as soon as we hear that, we have to understand we are listening to the matrix. As much as that is hard, and as much as that is scary, and as much as we really don't like that, anything that is boiled down to a simple narrative with a simple solution is not in alignment with reality, because our reality is very complex. Our systems are very complex. Where we are and why we are where we are is very complex. We have a very, 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 very long history as human beings of developing these ways of being over long periods of time. We have very, very, very complex nervous systems and trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. We have limits to our understanding, we have limits in our technology, we have limits in our ways that we can, in the things we actually do and do not have control over. And so, like I say, the first, I think, major awakening, if you want to call it that, from the matrix is to realize that nothing is just simply because of this, and nothing is just this is the solution. No long-term systemic issue has a single source problem or a single source solution. Okay? Nothing chronic has a single source problem or a single source solution. And the second thing is to realize the complexity of the idea that we have personal choice, we have individual freedom, we have empowerment over ourselves, and that's a big deal. And we exist within a collective. And the collective affects us, and we affect the collective. And not everyone is living in the same reality in the system as everyone else. Okay? So even the idea of how much personal choice a person has in creating different circumstances for themselves, how much access to different choices people have, how much those different choices will actually give them different results, not all of that is just based on pure reality. A lot of that is based on where you fit in the totem pole of society and what kind of choices you even have access to on your rung of society. And so, like I say, I just think the main thing we first need to realize about reality and about the matrix is that the very first incorrect program that we get in the matrix is the idea that everything can be controlled by us through our behavior. Okay, that's a capitalist lie. That's a inner child lie. That's us trying to gain mastery over a complex world that we do not have complete control over. So, like, especially like, right, I've been in the health and wellness world for pretty much my entire adult life and starting in my teenager years, being in the alternative health community. And for most of that time, I have witnessed and I believed that everything that can go wrong in the body can be healed. Right? There was a absolute through line through all of everything that I experienced in the alternative health movement. And that was that if you do the right things, if you find the right diet, if you find the right lifestyle, if you find the right meditation, if you find the right whatever it is, you get out of the medical complex, you stop taking medicine, you detoxify, you heal your body. Anything and everything can be remedied naturally and like fixed so that you're fully able-bodied. And for a very long time, I did not even realize that I was chronically ill, in part because of messages like this. I did not even realize that I had syndromes that I was born with, that are genetic, that have nothing to do with the choices that I made. I didn't get sick. I was born sick. And I did not even realize that until in my 30s. In part because I was trained in this system of natural health to see everything as a symptom that has a root cause, that is something I can do something about. So there were certain diagnoses that I fully resisted. I wouldn't even let myself go there because I was like, well, if I have that, I can't fix it. So that's not real, and no, right? And especially being in the deep tissue cleansing world, where everything is simplified even more, as no matter what's going on with you, no matter what's going on with your health, no matter whatever, you can cleanse it out of yourself. You can cleanse it, you can heal it, you can shift it. If you get clean enough, if you just get to that fruitarian diet where you can live on nothing but fruit or live on nothing but juice or live on nothing but air, you're clean, and then you're fixed. And I just don't know that there's anything more toxic than that. And again, it felt like something I wanted to believe for a really long time. And then the problem was that the longer I went on getting better, feeling better, finding things, whatever, but not healing, like never being able-bodied, never getting to the point where symptoms actually, like, some symptoms have gone away, but where I like really fully like didn't have to do all these things to maintain my position of health that I have that isn't perfect, I felt like I was failing all the time. I felt like I'm still just doing something wrong. I'm still just not clean enough. I'm not pure enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing it enough. And at the same time, never being able to follow the protocols because I knew like my body just didn't feel good doing these things. So I was like I never fasted. I never juice fasted. I never water fasted. I never did anything like that. I never really did anything super extreme because I couldn't. Like my body like literally just felt so horrible even like considering those things. And now I know why, right? Because health is so much more complicated than that. There is so much more to the picture than just cleanse all the toxins out of yourself and then you'll be awesome. When you were born with physical illnesses, you're not going to cleanse it out of yourself. Like it's just, you're not going to shift your DNA. That's not a thing. You can shift your biochemistry. You can shift a lot of things. But like I say, realizing for myself that I have some diagnoses, I have some syndromes that they're probably not going anywhere. That was a huge revelation. And then the second thing that I realized was in some times and places. Okay, so I had been fully gaslit and completely traumatized by the medical system all my life. Told that my symptoms were in my head, that nothing was actually happening, they didn't really know, blah, blah, blah. And then the guilt and the shame of just like, well, then I must just be making it up, and I'm making everyone's life miserable, and I need to just like, and I'm just weak, and I'm, like I say, like there was lots of things that were my matrix personally around my health that made me believe that anything that was wrong with me was my fault, and I just needed to like freaking suck it up and do it right, and it was because I was failing at healing myself and all of these things. And then at the same time that like medicine was evil, and anything conventional was just going to make it worse, was just going to kill me, was just going to make it so that I became like a drone who's like on medication for the rest of my life, and that's a failure, and all these things. And so I resisted medicine for a very, very long time. And in a lot of ways, I think that was good, because I think we could have gone down a route where I didn't take the power that I did have, and I didn't do the things that I could have done, and I could be in a much worse position. But at the same time, it got to a point where I realized that the natural things I was doing to try to keep my symptoms at bay and to lower the chronic inflammation in my body that was happening all the time, essentially, weren't working to the degree that if I stayed in this chronically inflamed state, I was gonna get a disease, like a real, like cancer or something in the future. Like the natural stuff that I possibly could do, I was hitting walls with how much healing, how much remedying of things I could do naturally. And it came down to some medication being the best way to probably prevent much more serious disease down the line, right? And that was like, okay, like I have to change my whole paradigm here. That medicine is actually helpful in some certain circumstances. And so, like I say, like this, and then everything else about my life, I did not fit into the world that I was born into, right? I did not fit in to mainstream Calgary, Alberta. Everyone eats meat, everyone is a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse, you get married, you have 2 kids, you have the white picket fence, you live this normal life. I could not do that. There was just absolutely nothing inside of me. I was going to die in that environment. And for me, a huge part of the matrix was the idea that there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't do these things, that I was miserable and I was depressed and I was sick in that environment because I was failing, because I was weak, because I was shitty, that I was making bad choices in that environment, and that those bad choices were the reason that I was suffering, versus the reason I'm suffering is because this environment is so horrible, and the bad choices that I'm making are how I'm trying to cope with the pain of being in this situation. Yeah? This was my awakening from the matrix. And this is why in another video I made, I said, approval is the matrix. When we wake up to the idea that what we're doing is living for approval, living to try to be what other people would like us to be so that they will love us, living up to the expectations of our caregivers, starting to see what our conditioning is, of this is who I'm supposed to be. Because here's the big kicker on that one. We were indoctrinated from the time we were born. So while our brains were developing, while our sense of reality was being formed, how we were perceiving what reality was, how we learned to perceive what was good and what was bad, what was right and what was wrong, that was programmed. And that may have been programmed incorrectly when we're thinking about how reality actually works. So when we start to realize, okay, I'm living for approval, and then we back up from that and we say, okay, that's normal and natural. Because forever, humans have existed and we have survived in groups. for almost all of human history up until very much right now. If we're completely kicked out of society, none of us can survive on our own. Okay, so this is the big thing that I want to say to every person who believes that going completely off grid and getting completely independent is the answer to saving all of our to all of our pain and to saving society. No, it isn't. That is also a lie of the Matrix. This huge bend for independence, and you are your savior, and you will save yourself, and just get out and save yourself. We all think, right? Well, that's the ultimate awakening. They ultimately realize that the Matrix and the system is fucked up, and they're getting out, and they are waking up. And what I'm going to say is, that's also a misunderstanding. That's a solution based on a misunderstanding. Because the bottom line is, we have personal choice, we have personal freedom, we do want to make good choices for ourselves. No one is saying that we don't, and that we don't want to. But none of us are ever going to be fully independent. Reality is too complex. Survival is too complex. Even if you're off grid and all these things, you still depend on the people to make your solar panels. You're probably not making your own solar panels. You're probably not making your own building materials. You're probably not inventing your own sewage system and hooking it up to your own thing. Like, no matter how independent you get, you're still going to need to rely on others in order to survive and thrive. Because we are at once individuals within a collective. So this is why this simple solution of, if society sucks, if culture sucks, if the way that the world works sucks, just get out, isn't reality. Because you will get out and it will be just as hard, just in a different way. Because that's equally opposing reality. To try to be completely independent and cut yourself off from society as much as possible isn't going to lead to the freedom we think it's going to lead to, because we are a species that is going to thrive together, or we're not going to thrive. And so this is why when we see people coming together in communities and looking to build alternative communities, that often, again, turn into cults. And this is what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more as we go along. But that's at least a bit of a closer idea to something that might be sustainable, is the idea of humanity waking up from the Matrix lie that personal individual choice is the saving grace of all of our problems. And when we start to recognize that community building, true community building, when we actually live in a way where we're working to make something work for the entire community as much as we possibly can, this is what creates the most amount of peace and security we could possibly create. It's the fact that we are still living in a competition-based model. It's the fact that we're still living in a hierarchy. It's the fact that we still believe that individual independent choices are the ultimate freedom, that we are continuing to stay stuck in the Matrix. We have to start to develop the idea that our empathy for one another and that our connection to one another is our saving grace. And that trying to be fully independent is literally the thing that's causing us our problems. The people at the top who are running our society are living with the exact same mindset of, I'm just in this for myself, as everyone who's saying, I'm just going to get out and do this for myself. It's the same idea. When you live for just your own self, just get out, just do it by yourself, it's the same mindset as the people at the top. Okay, so okay, but what if we have a farm together and then go out and volunteer and bring our lovely fellow humans fresh produce while not losing our souls in the rat race? And this is exactly what I'm saying. This is why people want to check out. This is why people want to just run away. Because being in community right now hurts. Why? Because we have community systems that are built on shit. So again, this is not simple. And this is why we all look for that simple solution when it doesn't exist, because there isn't a simple solution. And another big thing that we have to realize is that we are not the evolved species who's just making bad choices that we think we are. The reason we are stuck where we are stuck is not because we have the awareness and the information and everything we need to do to build an actually functional society, and we're just choosing not to. It's because we haven't woken up to what it would take to build a functional society yet. So right now, it looks like our two choices are die in the matrix, die in the rat race, be a part of this society that fucking sucks, or escape and get out, because these are our only two options, right? This is what most of us feel like. When we look out at the world, we say, I either have to be a part of the rat race, which is horrible, or I have to check out completely because there is no medium. There is no middle ground. And what I'm saying is, we need to start to recognize it again. If you are the kind of person who's waking up to this, if you are the kind of person who's saying, okay, this sucks, what we have doesn't work, we need something different, we need to stay in it to the degree that we can actually cause change and forward momentum in the way that society is set up. Because that's the solution. We're not going to thrive by ourselves, and we're not going to thrive in our competition-based model. We need a new way of existing within community. And the reason that I think we've never been able to establish really anything even close to these kind of ideal societies outside of the blue zones is because the people who go to have these like I say, the people who go to get out and create their alternative communities or whatever have the same mindset of the people who are running the societies that we have right now. I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to see how much power I can get, how much privilege I can get, how much of the resources I can hoard for myself, because the more I have, the better I feel. We are still operating from a whole systemic, not enough trauma wound. And that's where all of our systems come from right now. The idea that there isn't enough and it's competition. So where did that come from? That came from reality. Because for most of human history, and I know this is so hard for us in the Western world who have always existed, like those of us in the Western world who have had certain access and certain privileges our entire life, we don't know what it's like to not know if we're gonna be able to keep living the next day. We don't know what it's like to not know if a bomb is gonna go off in our house. We don't know what it's like to live with real, true insecurity. And so we don't really get why everyone is living in these totally selfish, horrible ways. And it's because we are still passing down this not enough trauma over and over and over again. Because even in the places where we have developed enough, right? So now at this point we have billionaires and trillionaires, which is evidence that we've created enough. We've created at least pockets of societies where there's enough resources that if we did evenly distribute them, we could take care of everyone. But we don't. Because our mindset and our trauma and our fear of not enough is the thing that's ruling everything that we see and everything that we do. The fear of sharing, the fear of community, the fear of each other, right? Which is absolutely, this is why people say they don't watch mainstream media, they don't believe anything the mainstream media says. I don't blame you, because a lot of it is just completely divisive on purpose, because again, the longer we stay being afraid of one another, the longer we stay being afraid of different races, different cultures, different religions, different all of these things, as long as we keep seeing these other groups of people as our bad guy, we stay being afraid. And then what do? We look to take care of ourselves, which is the system. That's the matrix. We're in it for ourselves. What do I do for myself? How do I protect myself? So then anyone who gets into a position of power, because here's another part of reality that we're never going to escape. There will always be, based on reality, based on biology, based on how brains work, people who are better able at collecting and maintaining resources for themselves, power, than other people. In order to create a well-balanced society, we have to get to a place where the people who have the potential to exploit and skew the tables in their favor choose not to, because they see that it's actually more beneficial for the society to function well than it is for small groups of people to hoard and have so much more than everyone else. We're not there yet. Humanity doesn't get it yet. And we don't not get it because we're evil and horrible and shameful. We don't get it because we're traumatized, and we have been deeply traumatized for almost all of human history around not having enough. Because survival has been hard. And even the idea that we have generated wealth the way that we have, we had to utilize exploitation in order to do it. To get to these levels of billionaires and trillionaires, to take the real value of something, goods, services, and to pay the people who are producing those goods and services so much less than they are worth for the wealth they're going to generate for creating the good or service or resource. And then to charge more for the good resource or service than the good service is worth, so that the owners of the means of production save money on the production and make money on the sale. That's how we generate wealth in our current society. That is out of alignment with reality. That is a part of the matrix. Wealth generation, the way that we are doing it right now, is the matrix. It's creating a fantasy around goods and services, charging more for what the actual benefit is of the good or the service, in order to generate wealth for small groups of people so they could hoard and hoard and hoard more resources for themselves. And they would require that the people under them are constantly without enough. And that's where the rat race comes from. The rat race then convinces everyone who's working, everyone who doesn't own the means of production, everyone who's a worker, the reason you don't have enough, the reason you're not feeling good enough, the reason you don't feel safe, the reason you don't feel secure, the reason you don't have the medication or the support or the help you need is because of you. You are just making bad choices because this is a free society. This is a free society where everyone gets to just make their own personal choice. So if you don't have what the millionaires have, you're clearly just not working hard enough. You're not doing enough. It's an inner deficiency in you. And don't be a freeloader. Don't ask for social welfare Don't ask for bigger taxation on the people at the top, because that'll just discourage millionaires and that'll just discourage innovation. It's a huge matrix lie. That's not ever going to work. That's going to continue to create this competition-based model, which what? Requires that there are people who suffer. This is the ultimate MLM. This is the ultimate pyramid scheme. Those at the top require those at the bottom. So, like I say, waking up from the matrix is not just getting out, because we can't survive on our own. Nor is it getting out and creating intentional communities where eventually someone takes over and we just create a little mini version of what we have, which is basically what happens every single time, because our mindsets aren't changing. We're not doing the work, right? So is it a total lie that there's an internal shift that can happen that will help us create a new society? No, that's not a lie. When we wake up from the matrix, what we're saying is competition is not going to work. Not everyone is equally able. Not everyone is equally competent. Not everyone is equally, right? And the fact that we even hierarchically value goods and services and resources over other things, it's not working for us. We've been doing the competition-based thing. We've been doing the hierarchical structure forever. And it continues to lead to the same problems over and over and over again. Again, you go back and you read history books. You go back and you read the commentary that thinkers were making about society 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You would have no idea that they weren't talking about right now. We just keep repeating these same systems over and over again, because we keep living with the same indoctrination programming that we have to fit in, and that fitting in is what makes us enough, but that everything's a big competition, and we just have to make all these personal choices and do everything right, and we will be liberated. And that's what we need to wake up from. It's no. We will make personal choices, yes, within a community, and it's the community that needs to feel safe together. And that's not a pipe dream. We can create that, especially in the Western world where we have so much resource. There is no excuse now for not creating social welfare programs that create an opportunity for everyone to have a basic quality of life. And then again, the big lie is if we do that, then no one will work, because no one wants to work and everyone's lazy and humans are just naturally lazy. We're fucking not. And that is just, again, a capitalist lie. That if we gave the working class a good life, no one would work. Well, that isn't true, because at the end of the day, we still would have to work. In order to be able to give the middle class, in order to be able to give the working class a good life, the working class still has to do their production and consumption. They would just be paid fairly for it. Because again, we are still the ones running society. The millionaires and billionaires are not out there cleaning the streets, doing the construction, making the plans, community organizing. We are doing it. We are the ones who are running society. This is the thing. We would still have to run society. If we all stopped working, we would be shooting ourselves in the foot. Because then no one's farming, no one's making food, no one's building stuff. We need that stuff. You see what I'm saying? This idea that if we gave everyone a basic quality of life in exchange for their labor, so that everyone doesn't have to work 800 jobs to try to make ends meet. And this is the thing, we would absolutely lose sectors of our economy that are unnecessary. People would stop working so hard and we would lose some stuff, for sure. But it would be stuff we didn't need. It would be stuff that's not actually serving us. Because so much of what we work to create and produce and do these days is stuff we are working to produce and create to distract us from how horrible we feel trying to live in the fucking rat race. So many of the things that we are doing that are polluting our planet, we are simply doing because we need the distraction from how much pain we're in, trying to function in this society that is built on lies. So we would lose those things. And to everyone's benefit, we would lose those things. The blue zones are good examples. They are highly resourced areas where everyone is a part of the community and everyone works together and everyone works just enough to create what needs to happen, and then they don't do more than that. Except for the people who are really inspired, the innovators, the creators, the people who want to build stuff to improve things, those people still exist. Believe it or not, we don't have to be in states of pure chaos and not knowing where our next paycheck is going to come from before we start to innovate. People who are excited to create stuff, here's my theory, and maybe society would prove me wrong. If we started to create a basic quality of life for as many people as possible, we would not lose innovation. We would gain innovation. Because people who are protected, people who are safe, people who have the minimum requirement of opportunity, that's where innovation comes from. We love to hear these stories of the people who were like down and out and had absolutely nothing and then created something from their nothing. That is the exception to the rule. That is not the rule. I want to know how many people who had the potential to create something great for society have we lost because they were born in situations where they didn't have access to education, they didn't have access to safety, they had to go into some form of self-harm or crime or whatever to survive. This is where we're losing innovation. We are losing people because we have a competition-based model. We are not creating innovation and opportunities for creation and innovation. The people who have innovated the most are still the people who society invested in. The people who are millionaires and billionaires who are creating the biggest things that we give the most money to have been rich their whole lives. They were safe. That's why they're there. So if we created that for more people, we would not have less innovation and less workers and less. We would have more. So again, what do we do with this personally? First thing, again, we have to stop blaming ourselves for how shitty we feel in the system. We have to stop listening to self-help and personal growth and spirituality gurus that tell us it's all inside of us, and if we just open our mind and if we just realize reality, and if we just blah, 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 stop focusing on the negative, take your power back, this is the solution. No, it isn't. We need to listen to our negative emotions. We need to listen to how we're in pain. We need to listen to why we're suffering, because that's going to show us where the problem is. Because most of us, again, still think society is fine, I'm the problem. It's my fault that I can't work enough, or that I can't make enough money, or that people don't value my service, or blah, 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 blah. No, it's not. We have a shitty system. And we need to start to, again, validate the things we are upset about, validate the things that hurt, validate the things that we are experiencing that we know don't feel good. And we have to stop blaming ourselves. We have to start looking at systems. We have to start looking at where we are living from competition, where we are living from denying who and what we really are and what we want in exchange for approval and what enoughness tells us, right? And where we are continuing to tell ourselves that more is the answer. We need more resources, we need more money, we need more luxury, we need more. Finding our enough, especially those of us in the middle class who can. So this is not everyone. People who are living paycheck to paycheck, I am not telling you to stop shopping at Walmart because you're supporting an evil corporation. That is not your job. But those of us in the middle who can redistribute resources, because we have enough, we really do have enough. We don't need to hoard more for ourselves. We don't need to create more for ourselves. We don't need to monetize more. We can do that. We can create better systems by not being in competition ourselves. Because again, a lot of us have our heads above water now. So we can get therapy, we can do all these things. And then what? We need to start to realize where we have enough and where we can start to share, where we can start to redistribute, where we can start to say, I'm not going to keep living in the matrix that tells me more is better and competition is the answer. And that's going to look different for everyone. And that's why I'm saying I can't tell you, everyone specifically, this is what it looks like for you to check out of the matrix. Because where are you on the totem pole? Where are you in terms of safety? Where are you in terms of having enough? These things are different for all of us. And so self-compassion and how you feel and where you are right now is the first step. Stop blaming yourself. Taking responsibility is not the same thing as accepting blame. So if you're blaming yourself for where you are in life, if you're saying, if this is just my fault and I'm just making terrible decisions, no, you're not. You have a reason for doing everything you're doing. It's how you learned that you needed to live in order to survive. And if it's not working, if it's hurting you, we investigate into that. There are lots of tools for this. But that compassion and that first awakening from the matrix is always, I'm not inherently evil. I'm not inherently bad. There isn't something inherently flawed with me. I'm doing everything I'm doing for a good reason, so why am I doing it? How is this meeting my need? How is this helping me? Where did this come from? What do I need? What do I really want? How might the way that, right? And then it's going to be a lot for a lot of us. Because like I say, I'm right there with you. I was raised in a culture in a way that said this is how you have to be. And it absolutely opposed everything that I am as a human being. And so I grew up the first 15 years of my life thinking I was a complete failure and a misfit and everything was wrong with me because I couldn't fit in anywhere. And it wasn't until I was like, fine, I'm just going to figure it out myself. I'll just go my own way. Like there was a little bit of that independence, but it was more of a like, I'm going to embrace who I am. So what do I need and what do I want? And I started doing weird stuff. I changed my diet and I changed my lifestyle and I became a hippie and I did all this stuff and it saved my life. But I didn't do it by myself. I'm not completely alone, right? I found on my way people who were like me. I found tools, I found resources, and the more that I got that stuff, the more that I wanted to give it away. The more that I became safe, the more I have been able to create something that hopefully creates some safety for other people. Because that's how it really works. When you really save yourself and when you really get it, you want to make it easier for other people to have what you have. And so I just believe this about all of us. I believe we are all fundamentally good, and that when we feel safe, we want to share. We want to create equity. We don't want to take power just because we can. We don't want to manipulate people. All of that comes from fear. That's not who we are. Stop listening to any message that tells you that humanity is this flawed, horrible, mean. No, we're not. We're traumatized and we're scared, and that's how we act when we're traumatized and we're scared, just like every other animal. We got to wake up from the idea that we are flawed and that everyone out there is evil and that we have to fight against a system, because that's not reality. We need to start to say, no, we're traumatized. We're hoarding because we're scared. We're fighting and we're creating division where it doesn't need to be created in order to keep power structures going because we're scared. The people at the top are scared. That's why they live like that. So what do we do to start to make a society that's more safe for everyone? And we in the middle can demand that. We can demand change. There's more of us than there are of them. So checking out isn't the answer. Leaving isn't the answer. Saying, I'm not going to do it, where we literally don't have to do it. And saying, I'm going to make new different ways where we can within it. So that we create opportunities for others to do the same. And literally, just not taking more than you need, you are creating opportunities for someone else. And again, this doesn't mean you go without. I am not telling anyone to go without. I am not telling you to sacrifice yourself, because that is two sides of the same coin. Find your enough, and then just don't take more than that. Find your enough, and then redistribute what you can. Stop allowing the world to tell you that you're fundamentally flawed and broken, or that absolutely everything is in your control. And then understand, right? There are things we may never be able to control. Like my body is probably never going to be able-bodied. And this is just a fact of my reality. So how do I live within that? The best I can. And now I want to create a world where people like me don't have to work so hard. Because I don't want that. I want it to be safe for some people to not be able-bodied and not to have to live completely insecure, because our entire society is based on, well, what can you produce and what can you pursue? That's not fair, because people aren't choosing. Again, so think about this for yourself. If it's not just people are making terrible choices and we're building these systems of competition because we just don't understand how reality works. If that's our foundation, what do we want to do about it? That's how we start to wake up from the matrix. Okay? There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. Our systems are based on fear and misunderstanding and competition, because for a long time that's how reality was. We have things different now. We can make something different now. So let's do that, okay? So that's all I have to say for today. Let me know if this resonated with you or not, and I'll see you in the next video.